Welcome to another episode of Regina District Industry Education Council. I know it's a mouthful. Today we have the technology spotlight. We have Sam from Prairie Robotics. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. So, Prairie Robotics. If you look up this company, you get instantly intimidated by what you guys do. So I'm like, I don't even want to try to explain it. Tell me about your company.
Sure. We are a robotics and machine learning company, and we are focused on developing solutions for the waste management industry. We've previously developed and sold technologies in the agriculture space and still do some work consulting in the agriculture space.
Cool. What do you mean by machine learning? To explain that to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
Sure. So machine learning is the process of teaching or feeding inputs into a computer so that it can learn and it can make its own decisions.
So, and why is this a big thing now and not 5-10 years ago?
So the big change has actually been in the available computing power that you can have to train and develop these machine learning models.
Cool. Where did the idea come from? Where were you sitting there in the garage one day tinkering away? Was it?
No.
Explain that to me.
Yeah. So we got started down this path through a project with Innovation Saskatchewan and the Ministry of Environment. They put out a broad proposal. It was how can technology be used to monitor waste diverted and disposed of in Saskatchewan. So we submitted a project proposal talking about how we could use machine learning to track waste being received at different landfills. And we developed that solution, and through the development and commercialization of that project, and talking to a lot of municipalities and waste haulers, what they said was, we actually don't want better data at the landfill. What we want is better data at the source. So that's what we've developed today, where we can put cameras on collection vehicles, whether it's recycling, or organics, or garbage, and we can inspect the type of material that's being received. Wow. So I guess...
So wait, you already created the solution that tracks at the landfill?
Yeah.
And goes to a central... I'm sorry about my ignorance.
No,
This is mind-blowing.
For sure.
That you did that, they took that data and said, oh no, we need something else. And then you guys said, oh yeah, okay, we'll build that too.
Yeah. Any advice for people out there is you can get quicker to that answer if you push people for money up front. If you say okay, we'll build it for you if you pay us, people will quicker get to the answer of, well, actually, we want it here. So initially, when we worked with Innovation Sask and Ministry of Environment, we were working with a research grant and just really interested in the project. But it lasted a lot longer before we pivoted to look at this collection vehicle than we honestly probably should have.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so what year was Prairie Robotics? You said that was 4 years ago?
Yeah, so we were founded in 2017. And we spent the first 2 years focused on agriculture, and we spent the last 2 years focused on waste management.
So talk to me about a day in the life of, because now I'm like, you're programming and coding cameras to connect with computers and sensors?
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate depiction of it. We have computers that go on recycling collection vehicles.
I feel so dumb right now.
No.
I'm absolutely fascinated, and I really feel like I should know this stuff, but...
No, I don't think it's common knowledge to understand the waste management industry. But yeah, we program computers, we put those on recycling collection vehicles, and those connect to cameras that we've installed, which then inspect waste and recycling.
So you're basically using technology to interact with the real world to manage things better.
Yeah, that is the idea.
Dear Lord, I'm like, almost everything is going to be able to be made better with that technology.
Yeah, we hope so, certainly.
I rarely have moments where I'm like, I want to invest in your company. I'm like, that is really cool. What was your first dive into machine learning and the robotic, like that whole industry?
Right.
Because you're right, it's not common knowledge, and I'm more so like, if I want to get into that, where did you learn about it?
So initially, I learned about it at the University of Regina. I was taking an industrial systems engineering degree, and me and some friends wanted to do a robotics project for our capstone engineering project. So a capstone is a final year, 12-month-long project you do in your last year of engineering. It kind of brings together a number of elements of your degree. And our supervisor at the time recommended we compete in this agriculture and robotics challenge happening in Rockville, Indiana. So it was just it was
Rockville, Indiana, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. The competition was a $50,000 grand prize if you could be the best autonomous tractor. It's a tractor that drives itself. So we spent the first 4 months, I guess September to December, working on ideas for tractors and what we could do. And we got to a point where we basically just had to either commit to this project or like back out and figure out a different project so we could still graduate. And we had an option.
That's a tough moment.
Yeah, we had an option to buy a Kubota tractor from Young's Equipment. They gave us a $1,000 discount. Shout out Young's Equipment.
I love it.
And I had some money from a previous co-op term. And we were able to get them to just charge us like $3,000 for a down payment.
Because I'm like, tractors aren't cheap, right?
No, tractors aren't cheap. It was a smaller size tractor. So it's like a garden tractor, or a bit bigger than what a riding lawnmower, but not a broad acre agriculture tractor.
Yeah.
So made a down payment on the tractor and extended out the other payments so we wouldn't have to pay them until after the competition. And then we were able to integrate with the tractor, drive it autonomously from an iPad app. We went to Rockville, Indiana. We won the competition, so we won the prize
so
money.
at this point, you're going into a competition knowing you can't afford this.
It's true, yeah.
This is like a gambler story.
It is.
That's incredible.
The one thing that I had to fall back on is I thought if we weren't successful, I thought we could sell it to someone. I thought we could sell a used tractor.
Of course.
And then, so after the project, we did sell it. We lost a couple $1,000s, but not that much, considering everything we won.
And you pocketed the winnings, and you're good.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that was a good first project. And then the following year, Yamaha actually sponsored the competition. So they give us a free vehicle to interact with, to integrate with.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, that one was a bit cheaper. And we won the competition a second year in a row. And then we sold the technology we developed to a company called Dot Technology Corp, which is based just outside of Regina.
So, back to the competition.
Right.
You went to school at the University of Regina.
Yeah.
You're going to Rockville.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a moment, like on the plane or in the airport, where you're like,
well, we
what
drove
am I
there
doing?
because we had to take the tractor.
Oh, no, of course. How
Yeah.
could you fly there? What was going through your head? Did you know you're going to be competing against some of the major universities across the U.S.?
Yeah, we went in assuming that we would lose.
Like, I'm so proud of you, but I'm like, that's unreal. I'm like, more so, I'm like, we should be competing with more people down south, because that's pretty cool.
For sure, yeah. Some of the universities we were competing against, Ohio State, Purdue, IUPUI.
Like, their endowments would be bigger than the operating budget of you.
Yeah, they definitely had much better finance teams and full-scale tractors. But they couldn't drive tractors better than us. That's what it came down to. So.
Oh, that's too cool.
Yeah.
So how many people are on your team?
So there were 4 of us. So 4 co-founders of Prairie Robotics.
Including yourself?
Yeah.
Are they still part of the team?
Yeah, we've kind of gone through a change of management, just more so recently. 3 of them, well, the other 3, they all have wives and children now. I don't want to date myself for the high school years. I'm 27.
Some of us have children, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, so just different lifestyles. And as we looked for a second project, just some team members wanted to be more involved or less involved.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could probably ask you more and more questions about this, but let's, we're gonna take a trip back. I wanna know how you got to this point, because this is pretty cool. I'm a little intimidated. You talk about things I have no idea about. but you're winning competitions all over North America at this point, which is a pretty cool pride piece. What were you like in high school?
Yeah, it's a pretty regular guy, I like to think. I don't know if there's anything.
Like, were you involved in SRC? Were you in sports?
Yeah.
Is that where you started wrestling?
Yes, I started wrestling in high school. I was actually SRC president as well.
Oh yeah, I was just president of the SRC, the student body.
Yeah. Yeah, those are probably the two main things I did in high school, SRC and wrestling.
Cool. And then did you go right into university out of high school?
I did, yeah. So when I was in grade 12, I was actually debating which university to go to. I was thinking about commerce at U of S. I was thinking about business at U of R. Ultimately decided to go for engineering.
Why did you do that? That's a really interesting...
I honestly didn't have a good answer at the time, and I didn't even really understand what engineering was, to be honest. But it just seemed interesting. Like, I liked the TV show, how it's made. I liked mechanical design. And that's pretty much all I thought engineering was. I didn't understand like the full breadth of it. But I chose to major in industrial systems engineering, and pretty much stuck with that for 5 years.
Cool. And then, but you graduated with a major and 2 minors, correct?
Yeah, so during that capstone engineering project, I realized software and robotics was actually where my interest was. So I tacked on another year to my degree and did a double minor in software and electronics.
Cool. Which
I would not recommend other people do. You can shorten it by just doing a software degree to begin with if you're interested in robotics.
Would that be the kind of track you would take if you could redo it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm like happy how I got here, and I don't think I would have got here had I done that originally.
Yeah.
But that's the track I would recommend if somebody's interested in this industry.
Now, were you working while going to school, extracurricular? What else were you doing?
No, so I wrestled for the University of Regina Cougars for 5 years. And then in my 6th year, I did some extracurriculars, went to some other engineering competitions, Western engineering competition, Great Northern concrete toboggan race.
Oh my God, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it was.
I'm like, a part of what I'm learning is like, you didn't just go to school, you went into school. Like, you went in to try to get as much out as you can. It sounded like you...
For sure.
You did everything. Yeah, you did your classes, right? But we haven't really talked about your classes or your grades or anything. We've talked about everything around what you've done. Plus, I like the idea of the capstone project. That's smart.
Yeah, I think project-based learning is probably the best way to learn a new topic or a new industry. So just learned a ton through that capstone project. And similarly through like the concrete toboggan race. And other even like group projects in classes, that's always where I think I learn the most.
Cool.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a high school student that is kind of on the fence? They're in grade 12, they don't really know what they want to do. Nothing's really jumping out at them. What would you say to them in that moment?
Yeah, that's tough. It's hard to give general advice that applies to pretty much everyone. I guess there's a couple things to keep in mind, which is school and industry are so different that it's hard to take a class and think that's what the industry or what your day-to-day is actually going to be like. Being based in Regina, we're actually in a unique situation where there's a ton of companies in the cultivator, which is, I guess, where we are right now, Regina's startup space. And there's more opportunity than ever before, if you are a high school student, to meet people who are working at startups, technology companies. Ask them about their days, ask them how they got there. I think there's a lot of people that would even let you shadow them for a day to see what life is like.
That's a great recommendation.
Yeah, I guess being specific, I can talk to like pros for why I think technology is interesting or why people should pursue it. I think everyone has this image of like software development being some lone hacker, at like 2 a.m., just like pounding
Four different
away.
screens on.
Yeah, four
room
different
start.
screens,
Yeah.
green and black text. Just crafting up some new module that's going to take down the internet. I don't know. That's just like the internet or the video portrayal.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, it's a lot more of teamwork. There's a lot of design. There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of collaboration, both within your company, and there's a lot of like tools and open source projects that most companies utilize that if you're interested in, you could contribute to as well. So there's, I think, a really strong sense of community in the technology sector, both locally and globally. And I think if that appeals to you, that alone is a really good reason to pursue it. And I think all the downsides I usually hear from people for not pursuing it is like, oh, I'm not good at math, I'm not good at like this thing, but...
Oh, I'm not good at technology.
Yeah, but that's actually such a small piece for what you do in day-to-day. Like, it's great to know math, and you do have to know basic arithmetic. But I don't know any programmer who is an exceptional mathematician today.
You don't need calculus to be able to do your day job.
For the most part.
You're
yeah.
like, well, there's a lot of stuff we know.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. Back to Prairie Robotics now.
Sure.
How did the pandemic affect your business? From the sounds of it, you can do it from almost anywhere, but if you're creating a robot, there's obviously some sort of interaction with the human.
Right.
So tell me how that affected you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's virtually impossible to be unaffected by the pandemic. One of our biggest clients are governments looking to improve their waste diversion, decrease recycling contamination. So we've really had to dive into our value proposition, which is what do you really offer somebody who uses your service? So it's helped us refine that a bit, whereas before the pandemic, when budgets may have been a bit looser or more discretionary for kind of eco projects, it was an easier sell. Today it's very much about the bottom line and okay, I pay you for this, what's the outcome that you're going to be guaranteeing for this? So yeah, it's delayed some projects, it's slowed development in some areas. It's forced us to do a bit more consulting than we would probably normally do, just to make sure the lights stay on.
Yeah. Specifically, what happened last year in March? You guys weren't coming here anymore, right?
Correct, yeah. So the actual whole cultivator shut down. Everybody was told work from home orders. And at the time, we were just hiring a co-op student. And part of the selling point to him to bring him on board with this new startup was that he'd get to work in this space. We could go grab kayaks and go out on the lake at lunch. We could grab bikes and rip downtown at lunch. And instead, we got to a point where it was work from home orders. But there's also this high level of collaboration. So we put some desks in my garage, and we worked out of the garage for a summer. And we
like
just,
a classic startup. Like
yeah,
every one of the big ones in Silicon Valley, it was out of a garage.
Yeah, just like us. We're still one of the small ones in Saskatchewan, but we did come from a garage, so we have that going for us.
That is too funny.
Yeah.
But you've already sold software to another company, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be able to say you've done that, I think is really cool.
Yeah, it is.
The question, how much do you make as a startup founder? I laughed when we have to ask this because students want to know, well, how much do you get paid? Are you going to make millions? What?
Right. Very, very little, I guess I can say. So right now my salary is $1,000 a week, which I shudder to think what the hourly wage would be.
But there's a trade-off though for that.
There is a trade-off. So there's a lot of control, there's a lot of direction, and there's a high upside in equity and ownership of the company. And I would say that's generally true if we don't look at founders of a startup. If you look at early team members for a startup, you're usually taking a pay cut to join a startup compared to a crown corporation. But that pay cut should be made up in an equity stake or an ownership stake. And that would be my advice to high school students as well, or to anyone looking to debate, do I go for a startup where it's a small team, the product might have a smaller reach, but I have a big impact, or do I look to work for a larger company where it's a bigger team, I individually have a smaller impact, but the product we're working on may be reaching more people.
Yeah.
And in that sense, the impact is larger in some sense. There's two sides to that coin, and there's more to it if just what you're looking for in an organization. But my advice would be, if you're joining a startup, you shouldn't join one unless you're getting equity in it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Is there a learning benefit too to be working on the ground level in some of these companies?
For sure. I think, again, it depends what you kind of want out of your career. If you're looking to be like a very specialized, and in technology, you can spend 20 years working on one type of systems or a subset of systems, like backend, or just like Node.js backend or .NET backend systems. Whereas in a startup, you'll probably be exposed to a lot more, but you won't be going quite as deep into each of those. So it really just comes down to what you're looking for and what you think you would like in a day. Is it to get, kind of very fine tunnel vision into one thing, or is it to be focused on one topic for a bit, jump over to the other one, kind of take ideas from a customer all the way through to develop a screen, develop a backend system, interact with the database. Two sides to that.
Do you ever have moments where you're like, God, I should just call Google up and work for them, or I should go to Microsoft? And do you have a grass is greener moment? Obviously, you're here and you've been here for 4 years, so I don't think it's very strong inside you. But do you? Are there moments where you see a programmer, developer somewhere else that's doing something that you're like, I could do that easier? Yeah,
no, I have some friends who work for Google and some friends who work for Amazon. It sounds very cool. I think it's a life I would probably enjoy. I don't think it's closed off just yet. We'll see if this current company fails in the next 18, 24 months. This footage might not be good for too much longer.
I love that that's the way you think, though.
Yeah, my philosophy on it right now is I'm 27. I don't have kids. I don't have car payments. My rent is $650 a month. So it's like pretty low risk to do a startup today. And, I've probably got like 4 to 5 years. Well, it's still low risk. And beyond that, there might be other things that come into my life.
That's really smart, the way you think about that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like thinking about my own life now. I'm like, I can't technically. And I agree though, but you're doing it smart though. You're keeping your options open and almost creating your own runway of, I have time left. It's not forever, but I do have time left.
Yeah, and I guess that said, my dad is an architect, and he was a partner in a firm, and he quit that firm to start his own company when I was, I want to say 16, and my sister was 19. So he did that when we were quite a bit older and took on quite a bit of risk. So there are definitely people out there who still found companies very late and achieved quite a bit of success.
For sure. So what does the future hold? What's your, do you have any internal goals, anything you want to do?
Yeah, quite a bit. I guess personally, I'm looking to run a sub 90-minute marathon, or half marathon this year.
Oh wow, I just watched the Nike show on the 2-minute or the 2-hour
Oh
marathon.
Yeah, not quite there yet, but that's just before COVID, I ran a half marathon in 91 minutes, so I'd like to get under the 90-minute mark.
Jesus Christ, man. I was happy with 2 hours, and that was like 10 years ago.
And
incredible.
On the company side, we've got some internal goals that we'd like to hit. 300% growth is a standard metric you'll hear in the startup community, and I think it's achievable for us this year. it's going to be like a really difficult year. We're in February now, and it's yeah.
I don't think achieving 300% growth should be easy for anybody.
Yeah, it's true.
Like just by definition, if you hit your goal, it's going to be a great year.
For sure.
Might be a struggle, but
Yeah, we've got some exciting projects on the go, and should have some case studies that we're able to publish on some of the work we're doing today, which will likely bring about more projects, which brings in more case studies and user studies that we can publish, and it just kind of funnels from there.
oh, too cool. Okay, first things first. What would your recommendation for a student to look for in an employer, either from your perspective or the student perspective? Because I'm actually curious too of, because you're probably on the other side of the table now. You're actually, you're assessing who to join your team.
Right.
So what do you look for?
Yeah, I mean, it's so contextual for like the startup or the company and what they're looking for. We're currently working with a number of students who are finishing their final year of software engineering. So we have a project on the go with 3 student interns who are working with us part-time.
Cool. How did you find them?
So it's actually, one of them is a co-op student who worked for us previously, and another one is a student that we interviewed and made an offer to, but he took a different position in Ottawa.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Couldn't quite hire him,
Like
which
what?
is annoying. But yeah, we're working with them now. And
So if a student is in school,
right.
apply for this, like, do co-op, like, do this stuff, because that's how they're going to get on your radar.
Yeah, I would say definitely students who are doing co-op are going to get their resume out there. There's communities in Regina now for people who are interested in technology, like Hack Regina is a great example. And the Cultivator does a really good job, even during COVID, putting
24-hour
together.
startup, we just had one, right?
Exactly, yeah. So there's a lot of opportunities to get involved in the community. And if your goal is to just get involved with the community, I think that's the right approach. And then those relationships and opportunities will kind of naturally bubble out of that.
I feel like you're the type of person that has always been a part of a community, though. You didn't just do it after school to help pad a resume.
Right.
You were doing it in high school.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like you want to create a habit out of being that person that's always volunteering, always doing something, because what you get is a hardworking startup founder that you have freedom to do what you want.
Right, yeah, that's true. I would say, if it's something you're interested in, you'll naturally want to be a part of that community. And if you're not interested in it and it feels like you're forcing it, like you might be better off with a different career path.
For sure. Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Is there anything that stands out with you when people are either trying to get hired for a co-op or you're interviewing? What's the biggest standout factor?
It's usually like personal projects. If somebody's done learning beyond what's required of them in school, or they've really gone down the rabbit hole in one technology and have a project that they can showcase for an idea that they're interested in. That usually stands out. That's difficult to do when you're going to school full time and have course constraints and everything else.
I'm guessing that's why the reason it stands out, though, is because you realize how busy these people are.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's like build something you can show us eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Or even if somebody's work, if they have an idea and it's half finished, that's interesting, because at least it shows that they see learning as like more than just what's required in school.
Touche. And that one would sound like they don't just want a job; they actually want to be a part of something.
Agreed.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
Oh, is that ever cool? You have an interesting world to live in. Tell me your thoughts on joining a mission-driven organization and what you mean by.
Oh yeah.
How would you classify a mission-driven organization versus just a regular business?
I think the truest sense of it would be a mission-driven organization is placing a higher objective, higher than profit. And you know, there are some really good examples of this. I think Patagonia is probably one of my favorites. Do you have?
Renzo grabs his jacket.
Yeah.
It's like the only brand I feel okay buying right now.
Yeah, of course.
Consumerism guilt, oh God.
Yeah. So, for everyone who's not familiar, Patagonia has taken a really hard stance on trying to repair jackets for you instead of selling you a new jacket, and for being okay with consumers that only buy one product from them or one item because they want it to last a lifetime, as opposed to kind of really quick consumer fashion. So yeah, that to me that speaks volumes when an organization is looking to do that and really puts the consumer and society first above what they're just striving for internally.
In a way that could be unprofitable.
It could be, yes.
The whole ironclad guarantee that they'll fix anything, no matter how long it has been.
Yeah.
Say that to a fourth level finance class and see what you get from the audience. They're going to laugh you out of the room because it doesn't make sense. But after the fact, that's why I bought one. My first jacket ever, because my friend was like, hey, you know it's guaranteed for life. I was sold.
Exactly, yeah. So when you can find those opportunities between a business and another business, or business to consumer with Patagonia, I think that's just great. And I think everybody really wins in that scenario.
So how, if you're looking to add people to your team, how would you find somebody that is more mission driven than just looking for experience or looking for a job?
Yeah, I can point to one recent example. So we're focused, our goal is to accelerate the world towards zero waste. And we're doing that through a number of technology products I mentioned before, cameras on trucks, accurate data collection, because right now there's really nothing to determine where waste is coming from or who are the big generators, and no idea to actually monitor improvements at the source. I interviewed a designer recently, and she, as a side project, is building a consumer mobile app where you can find bulk stores and waste-free stores to shop at. So that just speaks volumes for what they're interested in and how that lines up with what the company is pursuing.
It's almost like you're trying to fast track where their values lie and where if they align with our values.
Exactly.
Is that ever cool? I'm like, I want to see the app.
Yeah.
Oh, too funny. So your mission is to, I was just about to ask you what your mission, but you just stated it. That's really cool. Yeah, and I'm like, if I was in 4th, 5th year at engineering and I was picking my company to work with, that could be the reason to go over to you, not just getting experience somewhere, but actually trying to solve a major problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more important than, because we do solve a number of small problems each day. But if you have that thought in the back of your mind for what you're working towards, I think it kind of helps bring a team together and helps really focus that.
I used to say like you get happiness out of being a part of something that's bigger than you. Like at the end of the day, like you get to wake up smiling. And it's generally not just because of what you're doing, it's the group around you, which can be very powerful.
Exactly, yeah.
That's cool. This is a great question for being in Regina.
Okay.
The switch off between working for, being a small part of a large organization or being a large part of a small organization.
Right.
How do you look at that? And you said you had friends at Amazon and Google.
Yeah.
How do you look at it from your lens or your perspective of the choice you've made?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always worked I've worked in startups almost exclusively since I finished university. One of the startups I worked at, there was a small stint where they consulted me out to Farm Credit Canada, which is a phenomenal organization. Nothing against Farm Credit Canada, but I didn't really love that position, and I was only in it for about 3 months before joining another startup.
So you got to see a little bit of that world. That's cool.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how teams of teams interact, and even at FCC, I think there are probably 5 to 8 Scrum teams. So it's pretty small in terms of a technology company, even though they do some really interesting things on the technology side. I'm just a lot more interested in taking ideas or taking things from a customer's point of view, like an idea, and implementing it end to end in a product. So building a screen, connecting a backend to it, connecting it to a database, maybe connecting it to a third-party service, and then showing it to a user and watching them experience it, interact with it, and provide feedback, which you can get in larger organizations, but also in larger organizations there's more opportunity to specialize. And I've always been more interested in being a jack of all trades.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, but at one point, obviously, as success keeps growing,
Yeah.
you may be the big company.
Right.
How do you remain nimble still? How do you remain those small company ethics once you, and not ethics, so small
Yeah.
company inputs as you become bigger?
I can't answer that until we're a big company, I guess. You'll have to come back and film
I thought I had him!
film part 2 when we've grown. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I've been a part of other organizations that have gone through growth. So I don't know necessarily what definitely works, but I know what definitely doesn't work. And being non-transparent, being dishonest, poor organizational skills even for meetings and for teams and for roadmaps are all things that are obviously not good. So, I mean, kind of when you go through your career, you can learn a lot from good mentors. I think that's always important. You can also learn almost as much from poor role models that you might see. And that can be inspiration for what you don't want in your organization.
Oh, that's very good advice.
Yeah.
I feel like I still have 100 questions I want to ask about
Yeah.
robotics and machine learning. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, chat with you, say take you up on a day in the life of, where would they find you? How do they get a hold of you?
You can find, well, the easiest way is to shoot me an email. It's sam@prairierobotics.com.
I Googled you and found you on LinkedIn pretty quickly.
You can also find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter @samphilosophies. I'm doing a new thing where I only check my social media once a week. So Twitter is probably not the best, but definitely email, LinkedIn, sam@prairierobotics.com.
Very cool. Thanks so much for your time today.
You're more than welcome, my man.